Saul and Becky went by boat from Seattle directly to Alaska, but Bill and Lee first went to Victoria, British Columbia. This jewel of a city was founded by the Hudson's Bay Company in 1843, so it was celebrating its 130th birthday when the folks arrived. From the slides in his collection, they had a wonderful weather and visited a number of over 70 parks in the city. Chief among them is Bouchard Gardens. This glorious park was once the private estate of the Bouchard family. It is now a Canadian National Historic Site. The flowers in bloom account for more slides in the collection than any of the cityscapes from this trip. From here, they traveled by boat to Vancouver and up the Inside Passage to Alaska. In Vancouver, they continued to take pictures in the municipal parks of the city. There are many images taken in those parks, which include Queen Elizabeth Park and Stanley Park. Like his grandparents before him, Dad boarded, for the times, a very modern ship called the Island Princess for the trip up the Inside Passage to Alaska. Except for brief ocean exposure, this waterway is protected by islands from the Pacific Ocean. The first island, and by far the biggest, is Vancouver Island. The reason this passage to Alaska exists at all is it is a gift of the glacier and rising ocean levels. This geologic activity caused numerous fjords in the flooded mountain valleys, creating scenic beauty that Dad craved. I have mentioned earlier that Pat and I will take in grand vistas if they are paired with cultural sites, such as our trip to Japan. There were a number of stops along the way. The first Alaskan port was Ketchikan. They got off the ship here and apparently visited an Aboriginal village complete with totem poles. There is a cute picture of the Red Dog Saloon that advertised Victor talking machines. The boat made its way to Juneau, where the folks toured the Mendenhall Glacier. The final stop for the cruise for them was Skagway. While a tad more modern today than in the Gold Rush era, Skagway still has a distinctive 19th century look to it. The folks traveled in style from Skagway by road and rail to Lakes Lindeman and Bennett. Saul and Becky had a bit rougher time reaching the lakes via Daye and the footpath over the Chilkoot Pass. However, the pictures taken of Lake Bennett look much the same as if they had been taken in 1897. The goal of this trip was to reach Dawson City, and reach it they, both Saul and Becky, and Bill and Lee, did. As of 1973, this city has no paved roads. There are some modern structures, but much of the place looked like the first 2 decades of the 20th century. While there are a few derelict buildings from the Gold Rush days, fires, like the one that destroyed Saul's Hotel, have burned away much of the past. There are tourist recreations that the folks visited, like Diamond Tooth Gertie's Saloon, and a place that Mom and Dad panned for gold. Dad recorded a marker where the first gold strike was made in 1896. All in all, the modern era has passed Dawson City by. The trip in 1974 was to the Mediterranean, featuring a tour of the then country of Yugoslavia. The whole trip included Italy and the Riviera, but I want to focus on Yugoslavia because of what happened to that country a few years later and the influence that part of the world had on Dad. He had been on a buying trip to Prague in 1946 and was there when the Czechoslovakian fell under the heel of the Russians. At the same time, Marshal Tito held the states to the southeast in a loose federation known as Yugoslavia. He was able to rule with an iron hand the many peoples of that area. The main countries that formed this federation were Croatia, Bosnia, and Serbia. It is interesting to note that as of 2012, these countries are once again independent states. The folks traveled to many of the cities that became news sites during the war that broke up Yugoslavia during the 1990s. The image shown here is the city of Split, now in the country of Croatia. It is on the Adriatic and famous for its coastline and the palace built for the retired Roman Emperor Diocletian. You can do a bareboat charter out of Split today, but not when the folks were there. They spent their time wandering the old city streets and taking many wonderful pictures. The focus of the Diocletian Palace gave Dad a great photographic opportunity. The city of Dubrovnik proved to be another photographic paradise. I could go on and on about the 100 images he took there. However, the artist, Lazar Obekon, son and artistic heir of Jovian Obekon, caught the eye of Mom and Dad. Both father and son painted whimsical characters like in bright colors. Often the theme is Jewish one, like a rabbi piloting a flying machine in the shape of a shofar, the calling instrument fashioned out of a ram's horn. Neither the artists are Jewish, but most of their work has a connection to Jewish life and practices. Mom bought a number of Obekon prints. They hung in the condo even after their deaths, only to be removed when Pat and I moved into the unit in 2005. The image here is of Lazar Obekon, taken on the streets of Dubrovnik. We can only assume that this was during the transaction for the prints. One more story about a purchase in Yugoslavia will illustrate that buying from street vendors does not always pay off. Mom saw a necklace made out of horseshoe nails and thought it would be an attractive accessory to have. It was for a while, but over time, the nails rusted and ruined a couple of her dresses. It seems that there was no way to coat the nails to stop the rust, so with a heavy heart, she had to admit that this purchase was a glorious waste of money. The trip for 1975 was Eastern Canada. They shared this adventure with Jean and Harold Schwartz. An early stop on the tour was the province of Quebec and Quebec City. This is a city with which I have a real fondness of memory. The reason is that it reminds me so much of Paris. Dad and I share a real love of Paris and never said anything bad about the City of Light as so many American tourists do. Thus, if I might project, Dad must have loved Quebec also. This picture is of the old city, and if the truth be told, almost all of the city is historical. Unlike Montreal, Quebec is really not much of a modern town, but lives mostly for its French lifestyle of days past. I can remember a little bistro not far from where this picture was taken. Although it was more than 2 decades ago, at the time of this writing, I can remember the taste of duck l'orange. Since Dad was very fond of duck, I suspect he too shared this classic French dish.